I see you made it all right from trick or treat at the Huddle House.
Well, I did, and boy, I didn't trick nobody, but I sure got a good treat.
Yeah. It was a busy night over there.
It was, and I'm glad that everybody. I talked to some of the servers over there Wednesday, and they talked about how big a turnout they had, and how all the kids were so happy and joyous, and.
I guess you ate while you were there, didn't you?
Well, probably so. Doug Norton dressed up like Doug Norton, and you know
that's scary.
That is scary, very scary. But at any rate, the Huddle House was sponsoring Tootsie's Tips, and we want to say a post Happy Halloween to everybody. And I was watching some of Laura's interview with her. Boy, Sylacauga's got a lot going on, have they not?
Oh yeah, yeah. Hey, by the way, you're 8-4 last week, 67-28 overall. And a couple of games that we stumbled on, but there were some pretty tough picks last week, and not so easy this week either. Had a couple of games last night too.
Yep, I know Oklahoma showed out a little bit. Iowa State was all pumped up, and they thought they was going to beat them, but didn't happen. And UCLA sort of bit the bullet with the Colorado Buffaloes.
Yep. Let's get to it this morning. Lots to talk about. A lot of good games, and Florida ranked number 11, and here we are in November now, and this is where the rubber meets the road for a lot of these teams. Florida, number 11, is at Arkansas, and Arkansas has had a difficult year.
Well, they have, Jim, but you know, a lot of the so-called prognosticators who's supposed to know a lot more than I do says that Arkansas may upset the Gators. I'm going to tell you, it just depends on how the coach dresses. He'll probably have his golf shirt on, of course. I don't know. You know, Florida's got a decent football team. They're leading the East in the SEC. A loss there.
All they got to do is win out, right?
Yeah, And, you know, Tennessee, they got to have some help if they're going to get back in this thing to play the winner of the West again. But I just don't think that Arkansas, you know, the way they played against Auburn, my goodness, it was unreal, and you know, they played Alabama extremely tough. So, but again, I just don't think that they got the horses to compete with the Florida Gators.
South Carolina, which upset Tennessee last week, hosts Missouri, and you know, here we are with South Carolina. Just did beat UMass, and then they beat one of the top teams that was thought to be one of the top teams in the country.
Well, it's sort of a topsy-turvy world in the SEC. I think on any given Saturday, just another game I can touch on is Vanderbilt going between the hedges and beating Georgia.
Yeah.
That's almost unheard of. But again, that's on any given Saturday when you tee it up. That thing can take some funny bounces, and it has already this year. But I'm going to tell you, I think South Carolina can beat Missouri at William Bryce Stadium, because there'll be a bunch of when the thing comes on, you'll hear roosters crowing, and when during the game you'll hear roosters crowing, and when the game goes off, you'll hear roosters crowing. It's going to be late at night, and it'll still be crowing. But I think South Carolina gets it done.
What about Muschamp? Is he developing into a head football coach?
Well, I sure hope so, Jim. He, you know, he was a defensive coordinator last year at Auburn, and did a decent job, I guess is a good word to use. But he stepped into the head coaching job, and we'll just have to wait and see. You know, he was the head coach down in Florida. They was not very pleased with him, so he came back to Auburn as a defensive coordinator. Now he's at South Carolina as a head football coach. So we'll just have to wait and see. South Carolina, and I heard a guy say, another so-called prognosticator, that Spurs sort of slacked a little bit on his recruiting in the last couple of years. So it may take him a while to build his program up, but I think Will do a pretty good job over there.
What's wrong with Tennessee?
Boy, I'm going to tell you, I wish Butch Davis would like to know what the problem is. I don't know, Jim, if they were overranked. They play well for a while, and then, man, it just looked like they had to practice early. I just don't know. I can't put a finger on it. I'm like you. I thought when it's the first of the year, Butch Davis was just bragging about how good a football team they were going to have back in media days over in Birmingham, but it just hadn't turned out that way. They were all hyped up about playing Alabama, and Alabama just beat the fire out of them.
And they've not recovered from that.
No, but they did beat Florida, so that was one of their better days. But again, I don't know if the jury's still out on Florida or not. Just how good are they? Del Rio has come back to quarterback the Gators now, and he did a pretty good job last weekend. So we'll just have to wait and see. But as far as Tennessee goes, they better look out when they go to Nashville, because Vanderbilt is playing pretty decent football.
We'll talk about Vandy in just a few minutes, but let's go out to the West Coast and the Pacific Northwest, actually, where Coach Leach and his 25th ranked Washington State Cougars host Arizona, and this guy's absolutely nuts.
Well, I promise you, it didn't start just today.
No.
When he was at Texas Tech, he had a pretty good football team, and I think he was one of the first original ones who started this hurry-up type stuff, and done a pretty good job with them. But for whatever reason, some folks just didn't care for him. And but he's done a good job out there at Washington State, and I really do think that they'll beat Arizona.
Well, what's his name out of Arizona? The guy that was going to come to Alabama and didn't come to Alabama, and he was at what's his name? Rich Rodriguez, and he's still at Arizona. But anyway,
he got ran off from Michigan, did he not?
He did. Got ran off from Michigan, and he was at somewhere else.
Was it West Virginia?
Yeah, before he went to Arizona. But Arizona's having a difficult year as well. Number 22, Florida State at North Carolina State.
Well, that may be a pretty good football game. Florida State's had some tough games here of late. But I think that they'll go into Chapel Hill and get the job done against Chiswick in the defense of North Carolina State.
All right. Southern Cal, which lost early on to Alabama and then lost their next game, but boy, they've been running wild since then. They host the Oregon Ducks.
Well, I'm going to tell you, I don't know, the quack is gone out of the quack attack for the Oregon Ducks. I don't know what their problem is. I guess they just don't have that quarterback that they've had over the last few years, and certainly they've fell on a little hard times, but I just don't think they can get it done against the Trojans.
A team that we would have never thought would be making noise in the SEC, the Kentucky Wildcats hosting the Georgia Bulldogs.
Jim, I'm going to tell you, this may be a very interesting football game. They're playing over in Lexington, Kentucky. I've been there. It's a tough place to go and play. Kentucky's playing pretty well. Chubb, I don't know what has happened to him. I don't know if it's the offensive line just not opening up holes for him, but I think last week he was held to a low. And as far as points, productivity, Georgia's just not putting the points on the board like they're used to putting points on the board. So I'm if you're going to call it an upset, I'm sure Georgia will be favored a little bit. I think Kentucky gets it done in Lexington.
All right, take the Kentucky Wildcats. Who would thought would be talking about Kentucky football when it's basketball season?
Oh yeah, their program, they got a pretty good basketball program.
Number 10, Nebraska heads into Columbus, Ohio to take on the number 6 Ohio State Buckeyes.
You know, Jim, Penn State shocked the Buckeyes. I mean, just literally shocked them. And the Nebraska Corn Shuckers are going into Columbus. And I really thought that, they've got, a loss, one loss.
Yeah.
Both teams have. And I really do think that Ohio State will get it done in the horseshoe against the Nebraska Corn Shuckers.
All right, Ohio State over Nebraska. The 4 playoff deal came out this week for the first time Tuesday night.
Let me ask you this now. How, and I'm an SEC fan, don't misunderstand me, how in the world can they leave Washington out of the top 4? They're undefeated and playing good football, and you put a one-loss team.
I don't know. Number 5, Washington is at Cal Saturday night. Cal having a difficult year, and the Huskies, they can't afford to slip now.
Well, Jim, I'm going to tell you, I think you got to put some style points up now. If you're the Washington Huskies, you put some style points up against Cal, and hope that the voters will see it different from what they saw it the first time. I really do think until you're beaten, I don't think a beaten team should be above you. But, and of course, the next time I do that, it'll be the first time. So at any rate, I really do think you'll see some style points from the Washington Huskies.
All right, Washington favored over Cal, and that's a late kick out in Berkeley.
I'm afraid I'm not going to make that one. I think
Probably not.
It's like about 9:30 our time when it
That's
starts.
about it, right? A team that began the year with a loss, and then they won a game, and then they lost. The Auburn Tigers now putting themselves in a position to make a run late in the season, but a Vanderbilt team comes to Auburn. This Vandy team has got a tremendous defense.
They have, Jim, and you know, with Petway and Johnson and those guys who's been running wild against, I'm going to say, a lesser type defense than Vandy has. You'll find out this week actually how good is Petway, how good is Johnson, and how good is the Auburn offense.
Who is this Petway guy?
Well, he started out as on the defensive side of the football. They moved him to a tight end. They had injuries in the backfield, and he said, "Coach, let me have a shot at this." And as the old saying goes, as history repeats, or the rest
He
is
hasn't slowed
history.
down since he touched the
Well,
ball.
I'm going to tell you what, he's a load. And I made this statement. Derrick Henry, if there is a such thing as a shadow to Derrick Henry, it's got to be this Petway kid. He's playing good football. He's 240 pounds, and he don't mind delivering a blow to anybody, where you're a defensive lineman, defensive back, or linebacker. But I think Vandy will test him pretty good, and you'll see just how good a running back he is.
Well, Auburn rang up 40 points against Ole Miss, and you know, their young quarterback had a steady game for them, and Auburn is jockeying for a spot as we get closer and closer to the Iron Bowl, and not many people had given Auburn much of a shot in the Iron Bowl, but that's not the talk now.
Well, Jim, I've talked to some people about the Iron Bowl, and they say, Alabama people I'm referring to, and they say they're getting worried about Auburn. Auburn's got a good football team, and I think Kevin Steele has really brought a defensive scheme into Auburn University, and they got the kids believing. Their defense is probably their strong point. Their defensive line, they can alternate, they can rest kids, and that's an Alabama type thing, where they got a bunch of kids that can play and play effective, and they're doing it right now. But again, I think Vandy will give them a stern test, and but I do think Auburn prevails against the Vanderbilt Commodores.
Texas A&M, which is ranked fourth in the first release of the College Championship Series poll. They played Mississippi State, and Mississippi State, it just, you don't know what the deal is with them.
Well, I can tell you exactly what it was.
They're getting beat, I know that.
Prescott's gone.
Yeah.
He's with the Dallas Cowboys now. He carried, you know, I think he was probably about 50 or 60% of their total offense when he was there. And he is sorely missed, and so does the Mississippi State Bulldogs, that fell on hard times. You know, South Alabama goes in and beats them opening game of the year. Sanford's from over here in Birmingham went in and played them pretty tough.
Rang up a lot of points.
Yes, they did. I think pretty much that A&M will have their way with the Bulldogs in Starkville, Mississippi.
Maybe the premier game, or one of the two premier games in college football, will be in Baton Rouge Saturday night. As Alabama remaining number one, they've been that spot all season long. They won the national championship last year. I've heard you say it many, many times. Until somebody beats Alabama, they're still number one. But LSU will get a shot at them Saturday night.
Well, a shot is all they're going to get, and I know that Coach Orgeron is the head coach over there now after Coach Miles left, and they call him Coach O. And when the ball game's over, he's going to be hollering O. Because, take this to the bank, the Tide will not lose in Baton Rouge. Fournette, they'll eat him up. That Foster kid, I think he just relishes a time like this when they got that big running back, you know, and I think he'll eat Fournette up. And I think
Fournette last year was highly touted as a Heisman leading candidate going into the Alabama game, and Alabama's defense shut him totally down last year.
I think Alabama's won the last 6 meetings, 5 or 6 I think it is, against LSU, and it'll be number 7 after the dust settles Saturday night over in Baton Rouge. And I'm going to tell you, Alabama's got a good football team. Make no bones about it. They thought they were going to struggle with the quarterback, but this Hurts kid, he has come on and played extremely well, and adds another dimension that Alabama has not had, and that's he don't mind putting the football under that arm and taking off with it.
And Alabama defensively,
Great.
They create turnovers and get points off the turnover.
Well, they have probably their defense has scored about as many touchdowns as some offenses have in the country, and where they'll get a nutting, they'll probably get a nutting this weekend because they're gonna miss the safety and the punt return kid that got hurt and is out for this season. But I'm sure that they'll just reload the old cannon and go again.
All right, that's Toots's tips. Take Alabama over LSU, Auburn over Vandy, and Ohio State over number 10 Nebraska. Those are some of Toots's tips for the week. And the great prognosticator, he's got his horses loaded up and ready to head out. And all of this is brought to you by the Huddle House. Always open, always fresh.
Anytime you want a good meal, if it's 2 o'clock in the morning and you want a dinner meal, no problem, you can get it. And if it's 2 o'clock in the evening and you want a breakfast, no problem, you can get it. I've done both of them. And again, we want to thank Doug and all the fine folks there at the Huddle House and for helping sponsor Touch's Tips. It's always a fun thing for me to do every year, and I've enjoyed it, and this year is no exception.
Oh, by the way, we have secured contracts for our Iron Bowl preview this year with Jimmy Toots Holmes, and we've just negotiated the contract with Nate Boom Boom Brewer, and he was holding out for more
money.
Food.
Yeah.
No, more food from the
More
Huddle
food.
House.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll get it for him, but old Nate Dogg, he's my buddy, and it'll be fun to sit in with him, and as always, we'll have a few laughs, and I don't know, Nate, sometimes he just don't take that stuff as serious as I think he does, but you go watch Alabama play, holy cow.
Where's them words come from?
He gets excited.
But the Iron Bowl is not that far away later on in the month of November. That'll do it for Toots's Tips, brought to you by the Huddle House. Toots, see you a little bit later on down the line.
Thank you, buddy. Enjoy it.
More Daybreak right after this.